Hi there, everybody. My name is Kate, and welcome to my channel, Trinergy Awakens Naturally. First thing in the morning, and man, we're ripping it hard. So here's the deal, is that we're in a time when there's going to be perhaps some sidewinding of conversations with people of our past. People who might want to come back and they appear to be quite transformed, reformed, something redone. They're coming back to dance in one more time or play through one more time. And it's critical, in my humble opinion, it's very critical to be able to test the spirit, as it were, with people so that we know, has there been an actual transformation? Is this person bringing me a brand new self and a new identity of themselves, or are they just bringing me another strategy? Because a lot of times the people that we've separated from or that we've had real rub with, there's a karmic reason for that. And the lesson to learn is, what is my standard for what I'm willing to accept out of another human being's behavior? What am I willing to accept out of my own behavior? What am I willing to accept in the math that I'm doing, making possibly equations that blow stuff up? You know, do I want to maybe look at my technique and my strategy for how I'm dealing with others who strategize better than me, to win? Because if we're coming at it from the perspective, and many light workers, star seeds, anointed people, chosen, whatever your gifts are, many of us do identify as helper species. We're here to help. We have a greater vision. And so our strategy would be to include everybody. And assuming that everybody else comes from that perspective is a huge, big old giant mistake, because sometimes people dance in because they want to just keep us dancing with them. They don't care what the cost is to us. They're not thinking about it. They do not have the greater good in mind. They have the greater good of this moment, while I grab and growl, get what I want, and, worry about tomorrow's moment when I get there, because I'm going to be sidewinding until I get there. I'm busy. I can't be planning for the future because I'm busy grabbing and growling right now in these hostile takeover situations. And when, people wake up and say, yeah, there's going to need to be some, boundaries here and some definite, no-fly zones, and absolutely no on that. Never again, you're banned. We have all different levels of how we need to install boundaries with people. And so, especially now, from now until the day that you no longer, are looking for advice outside, please take my humble, suggestion to vet very carefully people that you've had trouble with, people that you've had conflict with, people that you have real severe reactions to, people that have severe reactions to you, even more importantly, and what you're doing. Especially if you are trying to pull back and you feel that vacuum is being filled very quickly with somebody who used to be the runner. The minute you pull back, suddenly you've got their attention. Changes like that, in abrupt changes in behavior, those are noticeable. That is not a sudden epiphany of, oh my God, I know what you mean to me. That is somebody who's trying a different strategy. Try not to get wrapped up in the bullshit, because people are just really reaching deep into their, ding dong bag as far as I'm concerned. I've seen some interesting tactics, sidewinding, and wow, that's really cool. However, it makes it easier to find the folly in it, the amusement in it, and the, don't cross the gun zone in it. Don't come into cross the gun line, coming in here with that stuff. You can see it from a greater distance and a greater perspective when you're not trying to defend from it or wonder or get caught up in the delusion, the illusion, and the bullshit that this person's really here, they're changed because they say they are. Oh, I want somebody to prove you are too. I'm a little too sciencey for that mess anymore. Trusting your statistics, I'll trust mine, and I test very differently than I used to, which was to not vet anything before it ever wobbled in the door and collapsed at my feet when it couldn't stand up no more. There was nothing underneath it. It was a constant dance, playing in and out of other people's trauma, just like they were doing to me. However, that trauma will dance me endlessly from my side or their side if I choose to engage with it ignorantly. Healing ourselves and healing those parts of us that want to give people another chance because they said they've changed. healing the parts of us that want to, reach out to a parent that has really been abusive to us, and it's just healthier for us to stay gone. Reaching out into other people's worlds to seek and find the excuse me, the healing that we need. When we provide that for ourselves, we don't rely on other people to bring closure to us. We bring closure to ourselves, and for ourselves. We bring closure to the nightmare that was, and we can more easily identify, after picking up all that mess and reassembling it elsewhere, we can more easily identify, because we've picked apart everything, what it was that built that which collapsed to begin with. Where were the weak parts of that foundation? Where was the structure not sound? And none of us really know in New Earth. We've not, any of us, ever lived in the dynamic of a healthy human society at the technological level, excuse me, in human consciousness that we're at currently. None of us have embodied that in that New Earth vision. However, there are those of us who are the leaders to help guide that process. And every single one of us, I don't care who you are, and I don't care what anybody else has to say about it, I'm standing firm that every single human that's on this earth has the template for that divine blueprint. Now, whether they ever activate it or can activate it or will ever be able to have access to it in the avatar they're currently wearing, that's not my business nor my concern. However, I cannot ever, not even in whatever role I think I'm in, I place myself in, or society places me in, I can't ever put it out there in good conscience for me personally to say that there's anybody that is without the potential to realize their God seed at whatever level of that they can. That is what I truly fundamentally believe, though I do subscribe to the NPCs and High Lake idea, the idea that people get so disconnected from their own heart that their mind takes over. And we've outrun ourselves on how much we can do to really be advanced and yet not bring our heart with us. And those are at great odds with one another. And so plugging in the heart space brings together the ability to communicate here and start fixing problems rather than stay dancing in a, hours long melee, really, of going back and trying to hurt each other, trying to share the blame, trying to cast it off somewhere else. At this point in my life, I'm looking around and thinking, where are the people that know who they are, and what their mission is here on this planet? Because we have work to do. I don't have time to argue with people that, don't share the same vision. It's fine that you don't share the same vision. You're not required to. However, you're also not given license to dance through or play through just because you want to. Not in somebody else's course, not in somebody else's lane, and not in somebody else's life. Those people that are struggling with understanding that your life, your lane, man, my life, my lane, my sovereignty, that should say it all, shouldn't it? If I was going to should somebody, that does say it all, that sovereignty is sovereignty. There's nothing about it that says that you need me or that I need you. That is the toxic system that we're moving out of and helping to raise the frequency into New Earth, because that's what's most supported there. The old frequency, the old way, isn't supported anymore. Otherwise, it wouldn't be dissolving and collapsing away. Now, would it? That's the natural cycle of shit that doesn't work. It just breaks down and it degrades. And so if we go with that process, understand the death process, deal with it. Yeah, we're all going to lose stuff we already have, and it's okay to restructure and rebuild. However, where are you restructuring and what are you rebuilding? Because if you're restructuring in the old rubble pile and nothing's changed, and there's a nuclear leak in the middle of all of it, and there is, if you go back there to resurrect and rebuild, have you really rebuilt anything, or have you just tried to rehab something that really had no rehab potential? So it really involves being able to help others. This is my lane. And, I don't share that with you. And I also don't allow someone to, play through. And there's only so many points of grace, amount of time that I'm going to allow someone the points of grace to say, you're standing in my face, can you back up? There's only so many times that will happen. And part of being able to get better and better and better about pushing that stuff out to begin with is getting very skilled and adept at being able to delicately move it when it tries to settle in, that, oh, I believe I hear a flyby coming in from 8 light years. I want to be that adept and that skilled and that nuanced in my senses and my abilities, so that people understand energetically who I am and what I'm doing and what I'm about long before I ever enter the room. However, the past, sometimes it likes to park in places where I used to be, and that's an old ass frequency, that when it comes in, it reminds me, I hear a faint bell from the past calling me to join it, or some pattern likes to dance through and say, hey, do you remember me? Because I remember you. Oh my, that's a perfect time to be able to test myself and test that spirit too, that, oh, what more investigation really do I need to do? Because I can see this. I have some faint sense of that smells like something I used to really not like smelling, back then. And I haven't smelled that for a while. It turns into that kind of an experience, rather than having a whole person and all their funky show up in my face and then go through the entire drill to figure out that faint, I think I know this, go with that. I'd rather go with that. There's 8 billion people on this planet. If I was mistaken about one person and smelled them wrong and assessed them wrong, and they were really something else to me, what didn't they know that they wouldn't come fight for me? That kind of thinking is really where I like to go with that. There's 8 billion people on the planet. 1111, thank you. We're not narrowed down. In my humble opinion, people believe whatever they want to. However, I'm not narrowing myself down to believe that I'm tied to one other me, to one other you. We have soul tribes that we can move in and out of, and we have contracts that we can be bound to. And, the beauty of getting to know how to play in and play out with people is that I have no real expectation of you. And therefore, I'm not asking you to bring the other half of this equation for me. I'm asking you to show up as a complete and whole person who can share, equitably with me. And that right now is not what you see happening. You see people that are broken, still wanting the broken system to work. And there's not enough in the broken system that's broken systeming well. It seems to be in, tragic fall, and this would be the time in disaster response and disaster preparedness, more importantly, to have said, well, if you're going to buy some, sort of security for yourself in the next, emotional days of blah, 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 might buy tissue, etc. However, the disaster is here, and, what already hasn't been done cannot be undone. However, it is possible to manage yourself through a disaster or emotional crisis, etc., to move to the other side and ask for the help and receive the help when the people come by and offer it, even if it doesn't sound like it's very helpful. I don't know. I don't understand it. Me, myself, I yield early. Like, okay, I need help. Clearly, I'm lost, because this whole disaster thing seems to be tossing me around and really, getting to me. This is really bothering me, and I feel myself moving into hyperspace without me, and I don't like that. So I need some help. And I, ask internally. That question gets answered so much faster when I shut out the clutter of the outside people who were giving me all their, terrible suggestions that weren't really helpful for their own reasons. Coming in here to listen to that's the truest conversation that I've ever heard and ever will hear, because it's me speaking to me in all the reflections of me and seeing it through the dynamic of other people, if I choose to see that too, and then see it through different dimensional understandings, time, etc. None of that conversation opens up, however, which is far more interesting. It never opens up if we're out here having the stupid, back and forth, it's the same dialect, it's the same language, it's the same boring bullshit. It doesn't matter how you dress it up, it doesn't matter how you wiggle it or squiggle it, it smells the same. And there's just no way that somebody who's opened up into that level of conversation above it will ever feel satisfied sitting down to, a shallow conversation with somebody who says they're there to love them, support them, and never wants them to leave their side again. Oh, wow, that sounds a whole lot like an anchor into a flying individual. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, and why would it? So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you in some way. And I hope that you enjoy your day no matter what part of the day you're in. And remember to get within your skin because you're divine. It's absolutely fine. And if you remember to allow that to keep you in line, that can help you to understand and to test the spirit to know you can feel. And you can go with, yeah, I think I smell some suspicious stuff, that before we just go ahead and assume that somebody has really changed or they're offering something new to the equation, actually make sure that they've offered something new to the equation. Assume the best about people and assume that the best of what they've offered of you, not the best of what the human potential could be, because my best expectation for me is far better than other people, apparently. The best expectation of what is reasonable to expect from the other person. And if it's been nothing but, some slick shit, start with that setting of be sus and willing to entertain the conversation, or don't entertain it at all, because letting them prove to you whether it's just a new strategy or a new person, they won't have a problem having to demonstrate where they've betrayed your trust in the past. Anything else? Sus, and I pass. So anyway, as I said, take care of yourself and enjoy your day, and I'll see you again next time. Bye, friends. Mwah.